Please, Jun-Seok, don't look at me like that. Her voice trembled, but it wasn't fear. It was love trying to hide behind restraint. Rain pressed against the tall glass windows of the mansion like impatient hands, thunder rumbling far away, a warning and a witness. He didn't stop looking at her. Ifunanya, he whispered, her name heavy, sacred. Then tell me how to stop. Her hands were still wet from washing the dinner plates, a soft sheen of water catching the golden light of the chandelier. Her uniform, neat, simple, proper, suddenly felt like a wall between them. The storm outside was loud, but inside the silence between them was louder. He stood there in his navy blue suit, gold cufflinks catching the dim light, power wrapped in loneliness. She stood there barefoot on marble floors, heart racing faster than the rain. Hello, family. Welcome back. Before we dive deeper, I have a small but heartfelt request. Please subscribe. Your support is what keeps these stories alive, what keeps love and hope traveling across oceans and screens. And as always, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I see you, I value you, and I thank you. Now, let's continue. That night was supposed to be simple. Hannah Pak, Jun-Seok's wife, was away again, another charity dinner, another city, another apology that never came. The mansion in Atlanta was too big, too quiet. The kind of quiet that made every heartbeat sound like thunder. Ifunanya had been hired 3 months ago, the new maid. A Nigerian woman with calm eyes and a way of speaking that made even silence feel warm. Her job was to serve, to clean, to disappear into the rhythm of the house. But somehow, she became part of its rhythm. It started with small things. He noticed the way she arranged his cufflinks each morning, silver to gold, gold to navy, always in pairs, always perfect. She noticed how his smile only appeared when he spoke about music, not business. And when they passed each other in the hallway, time seemed to hesitate, like even the air was watching them. She told herself it was just kindness. He told himself it was just comfort. But both of them knew, kindness becomes dangerous when it lingers too long. Now, with the storm raging outside, they were standing closer than they ever had. The mansion felt smaller, warmer, almost human. The faint scent of jasmine from her hair mixed with the smoke from his candle, because he said it helped him think. I shouldn't be here, she said softly. And yet you are, he replied, stepping closer. Her breath caught. The storm flashed white across the window, lighting up the tension between them. She wasn't broken, she was brave. She wasn't afraid, she was alive. Every rule, every line, every wall that stood between them began to tremble. He reached out, slowly, like a man touching a miracle he's afraid to lose. His hand brushed her wrist. The contact was small, but the world shifted. Ifunanya could hear her pulse louder than the rain. Don't, she whispered. But she didn't move. Because sometimes the heart says no, but the soul whispers yes. In that moment, nothing existed outside that room. Not the city lights, not the distant thunder, not the woman who would return to this mansion in 2 days. Only two people, one who had everything, and one who had nothing, both trapped by the same storm. The candlelight flickered across his face, across hers, across the space that was no longer empty. He took another step, and her hand trembled as it rose between them, not to stop him, but to meet him. And then, quietly, she said the words that would haunt them both. If this is wrong, then let it be our secret. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The storm answered for him, one long rumble of thunder that sealed their fate. That was the night everything changed. The night when love stopped being innocent and started being real. The night when a billionaire and a maid found something they weren't meant to find, each other. The next morning, the storm was gone. But in its place was silence, beautiful, heavy, and full of questions. Ifunanya stood at the kitchen counter, stirring her tea with shaking hands. Behind her, she heard his footsteps. Slow, careful. And then, his voice, low, cracked, terrified of what came next. Ifunanya, what did we just do? Don't pretend it didn't happen, Jun-Seok. Ifunanya's voice was steady this time. Not trembling, not afraid, just tired. The storm was gone, but the air still carried its scent, rain, regret, and something unspoken. Jun-Seok stood by the window, watching the wet reflection of the city shimmer across the glass. His navy blue suit jacket hung open, his white shirt wrinkled, his cufflinks missing. He looked nothing like the man she first met. He looked human. She turned back to the sink, rinsing the same glass for the 3rd time. It was already clean. But her heart wasn't. That morning, sunlight filtered through the mansion's wide windows. Everything looked perfect again. But perfection is a lie. It hides what people don't want to face. Ifunanya avoided him all morning. She ironed shirts that didn't need ironing, scrubbed surfaces already shining. Jun-Seok spent hours on the phone, but not one call lasted more than a few minutes. Both were running, from each other, from the truth, from themselves. He wanted to say her name, but guilt held his tongue. She wanted to meet his eyes, but fear held hers. They both kept pretending that the night before hadn't happened. But the memory of his touch was still on her wrist. The warmth hadn't faded. It never does that quickly. By noon, the air shifted. Ifunanya was folding linens when she heard the sound, car tires rolling up the driveway, the gate closing behind. She froze. Hannah Park was home. Jun-Seok hadn't told her she was coming early. He didn't need to. His face said everything when their eyes met. Shock, guilt, dread. Ifunanya's hands trembled as she adjusted the dining table. He straightened his tie, practiced a smile in the reflection of the glass door, and whispered under his breath, "She wasn't supposed to be back today." And just like that, the house came alive again. Footsteps, voices, luggage wheels, perfume. The world that had been asleep suddenly remembered itself. Jun-Seok. Hannah's voice floated through the hallway, light, sweet, familiar. He turned, stiffly, as she entered the living room. Her hair was tied in a loose bun, her eyes bright with exhaustion and affection. For a moment, she looked like forgiveness itself. "I missed you," she said simply, before he could think of a lie to greet her with. He smiled, the kind of smile that hides a secret and hurts to hold. "I missed you too," he replied, his voice betraying him. Ifunanya stood near the doorway, half hidden, pretending to dust the console table. Hannah turned to her with a kind smile. "Oh, you must be the new maid. Thank you for taking care of my husband while I was away." Those words cut deeper than any storm. Ifunanya lowered her gaze and forced a polite smile. "Yes, Her heart whispered, "If only you knew." That evening, Hannah insisted on making dinner herself, a gesture of renewal. The sound of chopping vegetables, boiling pots, soft laughter, it all felt like a home being repaired. Ifunanya could hear them talking softly in the kitchen, their voices rising and falling like an old song trying to find its rhythm again. She stood by the pantry door, invisible, listening. "Let's start again, Jun-Seok," Hannah said quietly. "Let's go back to who we were." Ifunanya closed her eyes. The words landed like stones. Her hands clenched the edge of the counter until her knuckles turned white. Because she knew, what they were could never be the same again. Later that night, Jun-Seok found her in the hallway. Her head was bowed, her hands folded in front of her. "Ifunanya," he whispered. "Don't," she said. "Please. Not when she's here." Her voice cracked. "You promised it would stay between us." He stepped closer. "It will. I swear it." But the way he said it sounded less like control, and more like confession. That night, Ifunanya couldn't sleep. The mansion was silent except for Hannah's soft laughter drifting down the hall. Every sound of love between husband and wife felt like a punishment. And then, her phone buzzed under her pillow. One message. From him. "I can't stop thinking about you. I need to see you tomorrow." She stared at the screen until the message blurred through her tears. The storm had passed, yes. But the damage was only beginning. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd love you to be part of our story family. Through these tales, we explore love, heartbreak, and redemption, one human truth at a time. Leave a comment, tell us where you're watching from, and never forget, some storms don't destroy, they reveal. "You look tired, Jun-Seok. Have you been sleeping well?" Hannah's voice was gentle, her smile even gentler, but Jun-Seok felt it like a blade wrapped in silk. He forced a smile. "Just busy, that's all." He lied smoothly, the way people do when the truth would break something delicate. Ifunanya heard them from the hallway. She wasn't supposed to listen, but her ears had a will of their own now. Every word between husband and wife sounded heavier, slower, like rain trying to fall through thick glass. She told herself she didn't care. She told herself she was fine. But lies, when repeated too often, begin to sound like prayers. The next morning, the house buzzed with quiet energy. Hannah's presence changed everything. She filled the rooms with soft perfume and careful laughter. She was trying to mend, trying to forgive, trying to pretend her marriage wasn't fraying at the edges. She spent the morning rearranging the sitting room, humming an old Korean song under her breath. Jun-Seok watched her from across the room. There was guilt in his eyes, but there was also grief, for the love that used to feel easy. Ifunanya walked in carrying a tray of tea. Their eyes met, hers and Jun-Seok's, just for a second. It was enough. Enough for Hannah to notice the way his voice softened when he said, "Thank you." Enough for a spark of confusion to flicker in her chest. She looked at Ifunanya longer than necessary. "You're very quiet," she said with a smile that wasn't quite a smile. "Yes," Ifunanya replied, lowering her eyes. "That's how I was raised. Polite. Careful. Invisible. But even invisible things cast shadows." That night, Hannah cooked his favorite dish, bibimbap with grilled chicken, sesame oil, and roasted seaweed. The scent filled the house. It smelled like memory. She placed it before him and whispered, "Let's start again." He looked down at the meal, his throat tight. He wanted to say yes. He wanted to reach for her hand. But behind him, in the kitchen doorway, Ifunanya was watching. Her eyes said what her lips couldn't. "You can't go back. Not after me." He picked up his spoon and forced a smile. "It looks perfect." Hannah's face softened. She reached across the table to touch his hand. For a heartbeat, he let her. But the guilt was too loud. The warmth on his skin didn't belong to the woman sitting across from him. It belonged to the one hiding behind the wall. Later, when Hannah went to bed, Jun-Seok stood in the living room, staring out at the rain-soaked garden. Ifunanya entered quietly, pretending to tidy up. Neither spoke at first. The silence was enough. "I saw your message," she said softly, not looking up. He turned toward her, his voice rough. "I shouldn't have sent it." "But you did." Her words were calm, but her hands were trembling. "I can't keep doing this," he said, though every part of him wanted to. "Then don't," she whispered, finally meeting his eyes. He stepped closer. The distance between them wasn't measured in feet. It was measured in consequences. He touched her wrist, just like that first night. The same warmth, the same pull, the same danger. "I can't let her go," he said quietly. "But I can't let you go either." Her voice broke when she replied, "Then one of us has to leave." The next morning, Hannah noticed small things. A missing button on her husband's shirt. A faint perfume that wasn't hers. And the way Ifunanya couldn't meet her eyes anymore. Suspicion came softly, like fog rolling in before dawn. She watched, she listened, she smiled, but behind that smile, her heart began to tighten. She called her friend on the phone that afternoon. "Do you ever feel," she said slowly, "like your home is keeping secrets from you?" Her friend laughed lightly. Hannah didn't. That evening, as the rain returned, Hannah passed by the study door. Inside, Jun-Seok and Ifunanya were standing close, too close. He was holding her hand, whispering something she couldn't quite hear. Hannah stopped. Her heart didn't break, it froze. And in that frozen moment, everything became clear. Hannah stepped back quietly, her hand trembling on the doorknob. She didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, she smiled, a soft, knowing smile that didn't reach her eyes. Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing a woman can do is act like she hasn't seen anything at all. If you haven't subscribed yet, please join our story family. Every subscription helps us keep sharing stories about strength, heartbreak, and redemption. Let us know where you're watching from, and remember, sometimes silence isn't peace. It's preparation. Jun-Seok, I need to tell you something. Her voice shook. Her fingers twisted in the hem of her apron. He looked up from his desk, tired, distracted, still wearing his navy blue tie from the morning meeting. Ifunanya, not now, he said softly, not unkindly. I'm already late for a call. But she didn't move. She just stood there, tears gathering in her eyes, the kind that had nothing to do with sadness, only fear. He finally looked at her, and that look broke her resolve completely. I'm pregnant. The words hung between them like thunder. He froze, pen slipping from his hand. His heartbeat stopped for a second, then roared to life. He stood up slowly, disbelief in his eyes. What did you just say? Her lips trembled, but she nodded. I found out last week. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing the room, his mind spiraling faster than he could breathe. How? How could that? Please, she interrupted. Don't ask me how. Just believe me. He looked at her, and something inside him twisted. Fear, guilt, wonder, and then, responsibility. He sank into his chair. Ifunanya, this changes everything. Her voice broke. I know. But in her heart, she knew it wasn't true. It didn't change everything, it destroyed it. Because she wasn't pregnant. Not really. She had told the lie the moment she felt him slipping away. It was meant to hold him, to make him stay. But lies are like shadows. They stretch until they swallow the truth. Hannah noticed the shift immediately. Jun-Seok grew restless, distant again, distracted during dinner. He would stare at his phone, typing, deleting, typing again. And every time she asked what was wrong, he said, "Nothing, just work." But love teaches you to read silence better than words. And Hannah could read his silence perfectly. One evening, she entered his study unexpectedly. He was sitting there, staring at nothing, his phone in his hand. "Ifunanya texted you again, didn't she?" she asked quietly. His head snapped up. "What?" Her tone was calm, heartbreakingly calm. "I'm not angry," she said. "Just tired. So tell me, did I lose you before I even knew you were gone?" He didn't answer. Silence filled the room, thick and merciless. That silence was her answer. She nodded slowly. "That's what I thought." And she left without another word. Meanwhile, in her small room at the back of the mansion, Ifunanya sat on her bed, clutching her phone. She'd done it. She'd told the lie. And for the first time, Jun-Seok hadn't ignored her. He had promised to protect her, to make sure she was safe no matter what happened. But protection built on deception doesn't last. The weight of the lie pressed against her chest until she could barely breathe. She whispered to herself, "I wasn't supposed to love him this much." And the words broke her completely. The next day, Hannah invited her into the living room. "Ifunanya," she said softly, "you've been quiet lately. Are you all right?" Ifunanya nodded quickly. "Yes, Hannah smiled faintly. "You remind me of myself when I was younger, trying to fix things that were never mine to fix." Ifunanya froze. Hannah looked at her for a long time, her expression unreadable. Then she simply said, "Be careful. Some mistakes cost more than you can pay." Ifunanya wanted to confess right there, to tell her everything. But fear won. Again. So she just smiled, bowed her head, and walked away, carrying her lie like a stone in her chest. That evening, Jun-Seok couldn't sleep. He sat at the edge of his bed, staring at his wedding ring. Hannah was asleep beside him, peaceful but distant. And all he could think about was the lie. He didn't know it was a lie, but it already felt wrong. He thought of Ifunanya's trembling voice, her tears, the way she said please, like it was her last prayer. He knew he should end it. But love mixed with guilt becomes something cruel. It binds instead of freeing. He sent her one last message. "I'll take care of you. Whatever happens, you're not alone." She read it, and the tears came again. Not because of love, but because of the lie she'd built to keep it. The next morning, Hannah stood outside Ifunanya's door. She knocked once. "Come in," Ifunanya said weakly. Hannah stepped inside holding something in her hand, a folded piece of paper. "I found this on my husband's desk," she said quietly. It was the ultrasound photo Ifunanya had printed from the internet. Hannah's eyes met hers. Calm, sharp, unshakable. "Tell me," she said softly, "whose child is this supposed to be? Whose child is this supposed to be?" Hannah's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Soft words can hit harder than shouting. Ifunanya froze where she stood, her lips parting, but no sound came. The lie she had carried so carefully finally cracked open under Hannah's calm stare. She tried to speak, tried to find a version of the truth that would hurt less, but there isn't one. "Not for this." "Hannah, please." "Please what?" Hannah asked gently. "Please forgive you. Please believe you." She took one slow step closer. "You don't have to explain. I already know." The paper trembled in Hannah's hand as she placed it on the table. A silence stretched between them, long and merciless. Ifunanya sat down slowly, her knees weak. She tried to steady her voice. "It wasn't supposed to go this far." Hannah nodded. "It never is." There was no anger in her tone, only exhaustion. "You know," Hannah said softly, "I thought you were different. I thought you were kind." "I am," Ifunanya whispered. "But love made me foolish." Hannah smiled sadly. "No, love didn't. Fear did." The front door opened behind them. Jun-Seok entered, carrying his briefcase, unaware that the world he built was about to collapse. He froze when he saw them, his wife standing, his maid sitting, the ultrasound picture lying between them. "Hannah," he started, but she raised a hand. "Don't," she said. "I just need to hear it from her." Ifunanya looked at him through tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "It's not real. I lied." The words hit him like a physical blow. He took one step back, his breath caught. You, what? I was scared, she said. I thought you were slipping away. I thought if I said it, you'd stay. Hannah closed her eyes, her face pale. Jun-Seok turned toward her, desperate. Hannah, I swear, I didn't know. I know, she interrupted softly. You didn't have to. Her calm broke him more than anger ever could. That evening, the mansion felt heavier than ever. Hannah packed quietly, no shouting, no slamming doors. Just folded clothes and quiet breathing. Jun-Seok stood by the window, watching the rain start again. Hannah, please, he said finally. She stopped, her hands stilling over her suitcase. I came home to love you, Jun-Seok, she said softly. But you were already gone. She didn't wait for a reply. She zipped her bag, lifted it, and walked toward the door. At the doorway, she turned one last time. I hope she was worth the pieces you broke. Then she left. Ifunanya didn't stay either. She couldn't. The shame was too heavy, the silence too cruel. She packed what little she owned, one bag, one heart full of regret, and left before dawn. No goodbye, no letter. Just a quiet exit from a life that was never meant for her. Weeks passed. The mansion, once filled with life, now echoed with absence. Jun-Seok lived in the quiet, alone with his thoughts, his guilt, and the ghosts of two women. He tried to bury himself in work, in meetings, in deadlines. But every time it rained, he remembered that night, the storm, the candlelight, her trembling voice. And every time he passed the empty kitchen, he could almost hear Ifunanya humming softly as she worked. He wasn't angry anymore. He was just hollow. Some months later, Hannah rebuilt her life in a quiet apartment across town. She found peace not in revenge, but in release. She started volunteering again, smiling without forcing it. Ifunanya, on the other hand, disappeared into the world. Rumor had it she found work in another city, living quietly, praying daily for forgiveness she might never receive. And Jun-Seok? He stayed in that mansion, surrounded by wealth but haunted by what it had cost him. One rainy evening, he sat on the balcony, the same one where they'd once watched lightning dance across the sky. He whispered to the air, to no one and to both of them. I thought I knew what love was. But love without truth isn't love, it's a storm. He looked down at the gold wedding ring still resting on his finger. He didn't take it off. Not as punishment, but as memory. Because some storms never truly end. They just quiet down enough for you to hear what they were trying to teach. Somewhere, miles away, Ifunanya stood under the rain, eyes closed, face lifted toward the sky. For the first time in months, she smiled, not from happiness, but from release. She whispered to herself, I wasn't broken. I was freed.